bring me into the octagon. I'm the camo shorts guy. I love my camo shorts. Camo shorts are giving me all my power tonight. It's hard for me to not think that maybe, just maybe, he is some sort of a savant of MMA. This guy's just like talking about, he's about to get into a fight. All he can talk about is his shorts.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the SmeshCast. It is Smesh Sunday. We are fresh off the fights. We had a 45-year-old Anderson Silva last night taking on a 34-year-old Uriah Hall. And I guess kind of as the odds makers, I guess you would say, kind of expected, Uriah Hall had that bit of a passing of the torch moment where he knocked out Anderson Silva. And I mean, it's not quite the storybook ending we were hoping for, a lot of us, but it's kind of what you expect to happen when you see a 45-year-old and a 34-year-old.
It was the ending we were all preparing for. I think we all kind of figured this wasn't gonna, be the best showing. I'll say Silva may have fought like a 45-year-old. That man still looks like a 35-year-old. God damn, that's a man who's going to be entering his 50s soon. He doesn't look a day over 30.
That's true.
Good for him.
Yeah.
He's man. I mean, he's done a good job of generally in the prime of his career avoiding damage.
Yeah,
so that's good.
Using those Brazilian supplements, the acai. It's all the acai. That's what it is.
Oh yeah, it keeps you young. It keeps you going.
I'm sure that's all it is, especially against Nate Diaz. I'm sure that's all it was.
They're gonna slow start on this fight. Like they were really circling for a while.
They were.
I guess you got to get the timing down. You gotta kind of measure out your opponent. But at a certain point, it was starting to look a little, like the ref's gonna need to step in and make some action happen. But they picked up. It picked up as it went on.
I don't know. It's kind of the classic Anderson Silva, right? I mean, a lot of these guys like Anderson, like you would say, what's his name? Wow, Israel Adesanya. Like a lot of these guys that like to use those fakes, like to use those feints, kind of have to start off for the first 2 minutes of the fight, understanding the range, getting to know what their opponent does, and working those feints and trying to get some reactions out of their opponent to try to understand how fast are they, what are they going to do when I go and throw these feints out, and to start to game plan a bit more, specifically get their traps set and get moving. And I think that's kind of what happened, especially when you see these 5-round fights. A guy like Anderson Silva, he's a legend. He's been around there forever. He's as much of a veteran as you can literally, like, you can't have a more of a veteran than Anderson Silva at this point in his career.
Yeah, no question.
So he knows in a 5-round fight, he has some time to get his stuff started, figure stuff out. He has no need to rush his way into it. He didn't rush his way in, and I think he had a good performance for that reason.
He rushed his way out. He fucked up.
Dude, but look, but what I was saying though is I don't think it was a bad performance. I think he did as well as you could have expected a 45-year-old man to do. And he still had some of that flash he used to. He still had that kind of karate motions. It just, at the end of the day, you can't have a chin that lasts for 25 years. It doesn't work.
You can't outrun the Reaper forever. You get old. That's what happens.
Whitaker's in that fight? I didn't know Whitaker fought last night.
Oh, you. Oh, you. Son of a bitch.
It is Halloween. It is kind of the Reaper on Halloween is kind of fitting.
I guess so. But Anderson, he did a good job. He kind of left the door open for fighting again in the future, which I'm kind of mixed on that. I would love to see him in like Bellator or something, just pumped up on steroids, get like looking like he's fucking 25 again, and just knocking out like guys who have literal targets painted on their chest.
TRT Silva?
Yeah,
TRT Silva.
I
would love to see that.
A new era, a new beginning for Silva, where he can really just have some fun and show us some good shit. But on the other hand,
Silvanator, we can let's put some robotics in the man. I want to see the Silvanator. I want to see the man shooting lasers out of his hands.
His punches already move like fucking pistons, just those beautiful straights that just like.
I want to see Anderson Silva fighting until he's 85, until he's more machine than he is man.
That would be a pretty good timeline. But I'd also, there's something to be said for retiring with grace and knowing when your time has come.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to make that choice right after a fight. I mean, even though he got beat, I'm sure I'm sure he was enjoying it. He was having fun in there. I'm sure he wants to keep fighting, just like anyone who is a professional in their sport. They want to keep going. I mean, people don't like retiring a lot of the time. They want to keep on going so they feel useful. But he'll recover. He'll get back to his family, his coaches, his team, and they'll hopefully make the decision,
the right decision.
Inform him that it's done. It's time to hang him up, and keep training, have fun. You can still spar in the gym and do all sorts of things, but you don't need to be. You've got all your money already. You don't need to be a prize fighter. You could probably, he can probably do some product endorsement crazy shit with the rest of his career and continue to make money based on the name he's already built for himself.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately let's not have him fight professionally in a cage. Let's not let that happen.
Adam, what do you think? What do you think about the fight? What do you think of Anderson Silva's career? What do you think of his future?
Honestly, I didn't think the fight looked terrible. He was still moving fairly well. Obviously not the way he used to. Dana said he felt bad for letting him fight. I mean, I think Dana should feel worse for letting Thiago Santos still fight.
Yeah.
I agree.
But obviously didn't end up the way he wanted it to. I think Uriah Hall is still super gun shy, and he always has trouble pulling the trigger, and it takes him a while, a few rounds to feel out the opponent and start actually mixing in some shots. Fairly even, and then I guess going into the end of the third round, it was more leaning towards Hall. Finish the fight, but where do both of them go from there? Honestly, I could see Silva fight one fight and one fight only. I could see him fight Nick Diaz, and that's it. No other fight other than that, just because Nick is more of a volume puncher. He's not going to knock Silva out. And they've already fought once, and obviously there was some controversy there. They might as well just finish their unfinished business.
That's a good Bellator fight.
Yeah.
No, that's a good UFC fight.
Okay.
That's not it. You don't have to move both fighters over to Bellator.
Anderson's got one fight left in his contract.
Yeah. And look, I mean, obviously his chin's not where it used to be. I mean, he took some shots from Izzy when they fought, and his chin withstood that damage. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's getting very old. It is definitely the end of his career. In terms of Hall, I could see him fight somebody like Chris Weidman, maybe. I think he's one ranked behind him. Probably makes sense.
Yeah, seems fair enough to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's actually a good point. We haven't really been speaking about Uriah Hall. I mean, the fight itself, as we were saying, Silva did look competitive. Hall, I guess at the end of the day, it was just he had a bit more power. But it was a very good point you made there, Adam, where he did still look gun shy. He hasn't quite gotten. He wasn't working the jab like you would expect him to. He wasn't. He just wasn't throwing as much. He always looks hesitant in there. You always know he has that one-shot power. He has some incredible technique. He's very comfortable. I'm sure he's an absolute beast in the gym, especially. But something about the way he fights, he just doesn't quite look like he gets to his full potential out there. And it is the guy that we really saw in The Ultimate Fighter coming up that we thought he was going to be. Look, I think we still give him more fights. He's still only 34. He has a couple more years before he really has that major decline. Maybe he's kind of at the end of his prime. But in terms of fighting, maybe that's his end of his athletic prime. But fighting, you can sometimes improve past your athletic prime because you understand the mental game so much better. So we're hoping, at least I'm hoping, that Uriah Hall just kind of figures things out a little bit better from now and is able to get to the point where he is able to at least show us what he's capable of, because I think at this point we just haven't seen it. It's not that he's shown all of what he's able to do, and he hasn't been able to kind of keep up with the top guys. I think he's fought the top guys and he hasn't performed to his potential, and so we have this question of what would he have been if he was who he was supposed to be. So I just like to see that, even if it means he's going to lose. That's not to say he's going to win, but I just want to see what happens and see who he really is.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay, I guess we can let's one last question, the kind of classic question. I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, where does Anderson Silva fit among the all-time greats? You can't move on past Anderson Silva's retirement without asking where he stands. And of course, I think that one of the big kind of key factors here is what you think about his steroid allegations. I mean, he was caught. He had a fight overturned. I believe he was suspended for a little bit. So we can talk.
Fail fight.
Yeah, that was a Nick Diaz fight. And so we can talk about whether or not A, he was using earlier in his career, B, whether it matters if he was using earlier in his career, because a lot of the guys he was fighting were definitely using. We're talking about Vitor Belfort over here. And just even without that, where does he stand? How do you compare him to a guy like John Jones or a GSP or even a Khabib like we saw last week?
The guys who don't ever pop for steroid use, and like, guys like Khabib, guys like GSP, where, it just seems so out of the question that these guys would be using substances. They're just such honorable guys. They'll always, to me, be, closer to the top of that list of the greatest of all time. But, there is something to be said for the fact that when you get to the top levels of really any kind of athletic competition, you got to assume that most people are on something or the other. They're using some kind of, extracurricular to improve their performance.
I mean, pre-USADA especially.
Yeah. For sure. Early UFC, no fucking question. Absolutely.
Like prime Silva time, right? I mean, Chael himself says he was on everything.
Yeah. So I with that in the context, that definitely plays a role into how I feel about Silva as the GOAT. But one important thing you got to look at, and I mean, sure, the game evolves and, people catch up to each other in terms of skills, and people who once looked untouchable, they fall behind eventually. But when it came to his prime, the prime of his career compared to other fighters in the prime of their careers at any point, who can you point at who's looked even close to as not just dominant? Anderson Silva could make his opponents look like they've never once fought a single time in their life.
I have one answer for you, and that's Khabib.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
It's Khabib.
Yeah.
Maybe John, but even John was caught in that armbar against Vitor.
Yeah. John has faced more adversity in his career, and not even just at that very tail end of his career where he arguably lost 2 fights in a row, but one of whom was against someone who didn't have any knees. But I think that kind of paints a bit of a negative image over Jones for me, but just the extent to which Anderson made people look like fools. I recommend everybody to go. Sorry?
Do you mind if I interrupt you for a second there? And no, sorry, Adam, I know you haven't gone yet, so we want to make sure you have a chance to go. But I was just thinking, a lot of people do remember those unbeatable, that Vitor moment, right? That front kick to the face. But I think Anderson wasn't quite as untouchable as maybe we're remembering him. I mean, there's that Damian Maia fight that everyone knows in Abu Dhabi was super, super slow and boring. There was I forget there was another couple fights that were just really weird, and Dana was pissed at him for a while. Yeah, that Vitor fight was huge, but even in the Chael fights, right? He almost was beaten by Chael twice. Yeah, he came out and had those crazy
no, he was comebacks. Almost beaten by Chael once. The second fight was more one-sided towards him.
Okay, fine. Chael may have wrote the book on how to beat Anderson by just complete pushing forward and wrestling him.
But no,
but fall for his intimidation trap.
I know. So what I'm saying is that you were saying that he looked like he was unbeatable, untouchable. Well, Chael for 4.5 rounds dominated him. He wasn't unbeatable. He was
the first one to do it.
But no one did it to Khabib. But nobody's done that to Khabib in the slightest. And even John Jones hasn't even had those moments where you thought he was going to lose and he was being dominated. You thought, oh, there's a chance he could lose. With Anderson, it was like, oh my God, Anderson is about to lose. And then he somehow came back. Even John never got to the, oh my God, John's guaranteed about to lose. It's, a scorecard might have gone in someone else's favor, whether it's Thiago Santos or Dom Reyes, or Gustafsson if you want to go early back then.
I think that, sorry, Adam, you go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say it also has to do with the weight of like which discipline, each fighter specializes in. Like Anderson Silva would have dominated anybody, in the clinch and his kickboxing and stuff like that. Same with Khabib and his wrestling. So obviously Khabib was able to employ his wrestling throughout his entire career, and like that was his only offense. And that's how he just smashed all his opponents. But when it came to Anderson, although his strength was his clinch work and his kickboxing, when he got taken down, that's where he had a lot of issues.
Khabib didn't even have issues on the feet, because yes, he might have looked like his striking was like the actual mechanics of his striking don't look as smooth or as high level necessarily as the other guys. Yeah, he looks a little clunky. He looks a lot less more unorthodox, but it's effective. The actual,
for sure.
And so he's not being dominated on the feet, even when he is on the feet. Maybe that's because of the wrestling and the threat of the wrestling. I would argue absolutely he'd get destroyed by Conor in a boxing match, in a pure boxing match. But that doesn't matter, because he didn't have any part of his game where he ended up actually getting beaten because of that wrestling. Whereas Silva, he did have at least one aspect where he was being beaten that was on the ground. Even on the feet, Khabib couldn't be beaten because there was the threat of the wrestling.
Yeah.
So Khabib is absolutely, like, arguably top GOAT of all time. One important aspect I think about Anderson, which, because like I spoke on kind of, I think the last time we had this GOAT discussion, is that at the end of the day, when people come so close, there's a lot of subjectivity in your rankings. So one important factor for me that I look at with Silva is the degree to which he has influenced other fighters. And Khabib, we're going to see that influence come very much in the coming years with like a bunch of the new contenders that we see.
Already
we already see people like they tie up the legs when they're on the ground.
The cross leg and the Dagestani handcuff is everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere now. So I think that will see more of over the next coming years. But right now, we can say with certainty that a lot of people, I think that they addressed this kind of in one of the interviews that maybe the Dana interview, but like a lot of guys who would have gone into other sports, and I am directly paraphrasing someone else here, they would have gone into other directions. But Anderson Silva led these people to MMA. They saw him and they were inspired by him. And
there's the Michael Jordan. Right?
Yes, is a whole generation of fighters that owe everything to Anderson Silva. So I think that plays a very important role as to why today he is maybe the number one greatest of all time. Just we can see, and Khabib, as we look back at his legacy, he's absolutely going to be on top of the list. But it's kind of like that whole thing of, I'm going to use a music parable here. If a new album comes out and it's extremely good and ground shaking, sure, it's amazing, ground shaking. It may have classic potential, but until it has a couple of years behind it, you can't call it a classic right away. Khabib, I'd say, in a couple of years, his legacy will, be more apparent in just how his style has, moved the game forward. And, people will absolutely be having these same kind of conversations. But, Silva just has so much history behind him. He's led this whole generation of fighters forward, possibly more so than anyone else. It's like the Velvet Underground of fighting. It's just like everyone, he inspired like everything that came after him.
Yeah.
He elevated the game.
And I think there is something to be said in addition that that he has over Khabib. I mean, this is something that you can debate whether he has over Khabib, because you just haven't seen, as you mentioned, what influence Khabib will have for the next 10 years, like we've seen with Anderson. But what Anderson has over Khabib is the longevity. Think of the fact that Anderson was the mega superstar, the biggest thing in the UFC before Khabib joined the UFC. And he had that title for a few years, right? Khabib didn't join until 2012, right? Anderson was massive way before then. What year? Do you guys know what year he joined? I'm actually not sure. I should have checked. But he was already a huge star way before then. Let's actually check that.
Yeah, let's get a look at that.
I'm really curious.
I'll tell you one thing. Khabib learned English faster than Anderson Silva did, so maybe he's
2006.
He's the GOAT at that right now.
I believe it was 2006. It was his first ever fight. Okay, well, so there we are. So the man joins in 2006. Khabib doesn't join until 2012. Anderson Silva was a huge star all those years. Khabib joins, has his entire career, his rise to fame, his rise to glory, everything. Meanwhile, Anderson is still up there. Khabib is the champion. He defends. He has the Conor fight, the Dustin fight, the Gaethje fight, wins all that shit, retires. Silva's still around. This week, Silva retires. Silva was a legend for longer than Khabib was in the UFC. That's how long this. there's longevity to that career. It's something that Khabib didn't come close to, and it's something that only John Jones has, and GSP has, up to the level of Anderson. Maybe not even to that point. Just the number of title defenses, the number of middleweight title fights. Just the longevity is something that no one else other than John Jones and GSP have come close to, and maybe DJ.
My God, can we, sorry, just because you mentioned John Jones, can we just quickly talk about how fucking annoying he's been this last week?
Oh, God.
How disrespectful he's been to Khabib. Like, let the man have his moment. For the love of Christ, let him have his moment. He just retired, one of the most legendary careers that the UFC will ever see, and all that John Jones can do is make it about himself.
The John Jones ego will not be overlooked by anybody. It cannot be overlooked because it will make sure it is right in the forefront of every conversation.
God, if Israel wins, and we'll talk more about this a little later, but if Israel wins his fight against Jan and takes that light heavyweight belt, we are going to see unprecedented levels of salt.
Yeah, so let's
Jones is going to go nuts.
Let's put that on the side for a second. Let's move on to our co-main event. We will get to that absolutely on today's podcast. We've been riffing for a little bit here. Let's move on to the co-main event. Bryce Mitchell taking on Andre Fili. This was, in my opinion, this is my most excited fight of the night. I was really excited to see, because these guys are, Andre Fili has been around for a long time, and he's been very, very successful. Bryce Mitchell is this contender who's been dominant on the ground beyond compare against everybody. No one's come close to holding a candle up to him. And so I was really curious to see what he could do against Fili, who's also very good on the ground. And honestly, I was really, really impressed by both these guys. Thug Nasty's tenacity, the persistence on those takedowns was something I did not expect out of the guy. I did not expect the guy to go for 15, 20 takedowns over the course of the fight. In that first round, he went for takedown after takedown after takedown. But I was also really impressed with Fili's ability to just be slippery on the bottom. I thought that when Bryce gets you down, it would be over. I thought if Bryce gets him down once, he would hold him down for the round and probably submit him that round. I did not expect Fili to be able to squirm his way out, to shrimp his way out, to find a way to get back onto his feet almost every single time. And even when he was held down, he wasn't held down in one position. He was always mixing up positions. Bryce was trying to go and pass guard. He might have been successful, but he could reclaim guard. He was defending the submissions. And every time he was mounted, he would buck and he would get back up to his feet. It was just an amazing, amazing fight, back and forth on the ground and on the feet.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun to watch. Those camo shorts really paid off. They really led him to victory there. Is there context that I'm missing behind these shorts? Is there something there? Because honest to God, he sounded like, I don't know, the fact that the marketing and the promos all seemed to be based around the shorts, and it's just, I don't know. You see videos of this guy sitting on his farm on his tractor, just talking about his camo shorts and how important the shorts are to him, and how shorts are like his legacy. He's bringing in a piece of himself in there. I don't know. He just seems like a simple boy from the South.
Well, the thing is, like, I've seen him. The man, I think I mentioned last week on Theo Von's podcast, he is so funny. He's such a marketable dude.
I just really listened to it.
and yet 2 minutes, he had a 2-minute promo all about him, and the only thing they fucking talk about for 2 minutes straight is how he wants these camo shorts. And I get it. That was really funny. Everyone was talking about them after every single one of his post-fight interviews. It was funny. It was. And he got the shorts and his hype. And do a 30-second promo about that and a minute and a half about how funny the guy is, or even better, promote his fighting ability. The man is not like some guy who's just funny. He's not that good, but he's fun to listen to. He's entertaining. And so we have him around because people want to watch him. No, this guy is a top level prospect. This guy is unbelievable on the ground. I want to see this guy fight because of his fighting ability, not because of how funny he is. So promote his fighting ability, promote his personality, and mention the camo shorts on the side. What the fuck are you doing?
So you saw it as a promotion issue, because based on the editing, I thought it was just like, God damn, man, you just can't stop talking about these shorts. You just can't stop thinking about them. It's all they're in his dreams. They're in his mind. He opened his third eye as soon as he put those shorts on.
And you would think, and what's funny is that the camo shorts that he's been talking about this whole time, in my opinion, this might, I mean, again, he's against the best opponent he's had, but this was the least dominant performance he's had. I don't know if you can say it's his worst performance, because again, it was against such a top level guy, and he showed he's the real deal. But it was least dominant performance, so maybe the camo shorts aren't so good after all. Maybe maybe he's better when the opponent sees him coming.
Could be.
But that being said, as he what he says he likes to do, he likes to take the guys down. He doesn't need to get a submission right away. He says he likes to cook the guys down to the bone. Eventually they'll give him something, and he'll take advantage of it, get the submission. And Andre Fili, he has that mental strength. He wasn't giving up. Yes, as the fight went on, we did see more dominance on the ground. We saw more time on the ground by Bryce Mitchell. Now that second round, actually, come to think of it, the first round he got control time. Second round was definitely Fili's round, in my opinion. I don't know how the judges gave it. Two judges gave it to Bryce Mitchell. I was shook. I thought Fili dominated him on the feet on that second round. In that third round, he just didn't have the willpower to keep up against all those takedown attempts. And Bryce was able to make some progression on the ground, get mount a little bit longer time, a few more times, hold that side control for a while. And that's why he was able to get the win. I don't know. I think he probably would have been able to sneak out a submission if it went for 5 rounds. But I mean, it was just a really, really impressive defensive effort by Fili. And he almost got Bryce in that second round.
Very great fight.
Where do you guys want to see? I think. Where do you guys want to see Bryce go next? I think Adam, you put in the mentions here. It would be absolutely legendary to see him against Ryan Hall.
We haven't seen Ryan Hall fight for a while. He was supposed to fight Ricardo Lamas, but I mean, nobody wants to fight him.
What's happening with that Ricardo Lamas?
He retired, so
that fight will never fighting. Oh,
yeah, so that fight will never come to fruition. So I mean, they should fight. I'm sure Mitchell would take that fight. Obviously, if it was strictly jiu-jitsu, Ryan Hall would have the advantage. But because this is a mixed martial arts fight, there's a lot of opportunity to create something exciting. And Ryan Hall's actually does some cool spinning stuff. But I think that's a great fight for both of them to bump themselves up into that top 10 range.
I agree. I think it's a really fun fight. I think to see the spinning stuff. I mean, Bryce Mitchell, I said Fili was beating him on the feet. He absolutely was. But Mitchell was not nothing on the feet. He had some striking. It wasn't necessary. It was a little bit wild, a little bit loopy. He didn't seem to be able to keep his hands quite up to his chin. He kind of opened up a bit when he punched, and he was caught a couple times, but he did have good accuracy. He hit Fili with some punches, knocked Fili's head back a couple times. And yet Ryan Hall, while he doesn't really have much striking on with the hands, as you mentioned, he has some great spinny shit with those kicks. So it'll be a guy who's all boxing with some leg kicks, and against a guy who's all spinning kicks. And then on the ground, we have an awesome legendary ground battle against two of the best submission guys in the UFC. I think it's just a fun overall matchup for everybody involved. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, hopefully we see that fight. Moving on to our featured bout of the night, we had Greg Hardy making his return after that. I believe his last fight was against Volkov. That 3-round loss or 5-round loss, I think. Well, now he fought against.
I think that was it was a decision though, right? Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was he took on Maurice Green in this fight. Apparently, it was actually almost canceled a couple hours beforehand. There was some drama going on. But I mean,
maybe Greg Hardy deserved to get canceled.
very much possibility. Yes. But I mean, he did come out. Maurice Green is not a top level prospect, but he's not nothing either. He's kind of one of those. He seems like a bit of a journeyman at this point. We kind of seen he's not going to be a top level guy, but he's going to stay around in the UFC for a few more fights, I think. And he was able to beat Green. He's able to take him out, get the finish. Look, what can we say? He keeps on making some small steps up every time he fights. He's getting better. He might not have put I think he's still growing. Greg Hardy is a good fighter. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He's gonna
for heavyweight. Yeah. I'll say every time that I've seen Greg Hardy fight, it does look like he's gotten better, to a noticeable degree. This fight, I wouldn't say it looked like it looked like he did what he's used to doing, what he always does, and he didn't show me anything that shows any major evolution in his game. he was just very successful in this fight doing what he does. Whether that translates well to the top 15, I mean, we've sort of seen how that goes with his fight with Volkov. He was not able to, out-brawl a very technical, high-level boxer, and somebody who was able to. I think with Greg Hardy, the big thing when you're fighting him is your mentality. I think that you need to be ready to withstand that. Like that storm of a lifetime, like the most harsh moment of your life is that first 30 seconds until Greg Hardy tires himself out. If you can withstand that, and that, like, let's be honest. I think I might be a little disjointed here, but I see him maybe creeping into the top 15 with the skill set he brings, that intense strength. I see him absolutely creeping into the top 15. Never see him getting further than maybe the top 10. I don't think, and certainly never entering the top 5.
I agree. I agree with that.
He can't beat Ngannou. He can't beat Stipe
right now. But I mean, we still have to see where his ceiling really is.
I don't
but
think
I agree.
I don't think he will ever beat Stipe. That will never happen.
His ceiling is not a top 5 fighter. I agree. His ceiling is probably maybe a 7th, 8th, 9th, even 10th ranked. That's not to say he can't beat a top 7, top 6 even fighter in the right circumstance, because at heavyweight anyone can beat anybody with the right circumstance. But I think the real big issue he's going to have is twofold. I think you can learn a lot of the striking stuff, especially at that weight, but you can't learn the ground stuff that quickly. And he's going to really struggle if they put him against a guy like Curtis Blades that has some wrestling, or Alexei Oleinik, who's going to take him down and strangle him.
Yeah, I was thinking about an Oleinik fight.
I think he has no real chance against a guy with real groundwork. Because I think it just takes too long to learn. Additionally, I think he doesn't have the gas tank. He has that football cardio where he can go real hard for 30 seconds, and he can do it in a lot of spurts with some rest between. But to see him go for 15 minutes or 25 minutes, we saw him gas after that first round.
We see every time after his first. Everybody who fights him has to know at this point. And it seems like they do know from how they approach it. It's just that he's so good at imposing his will on
his physicality.
Fighters. You know that he's coming out there with that fucking hailstorm right at the beginning. You withstand it, you make it through, and if you can handle the punches, if you can get him to the ground, you can take him out. If you can outbox him like Volkov did, you can take him out. That's why I don't see him stand. Like, if he couldn't beat Volkov at heavyweight as a boxer, I don't think he's creeping into the top 10.
He's still improving.
He is improving, but his improvement definitely seems, based on how much he improves fight by fight. This fight didn't look like he had improved very much from his previous thing. Also, after, I know in his interview he's like, yeah, I just I took it home in the way that I know how, in the way that I do. Kind of makes it sound like he's just super comfortable with that heavy burst brawling style.
It was a good jab. It was a hard jab, to be fair. It was a good technique, like almost an uppercut straight jab.
And it works when it works. But again, we saw against a very high level opponent, it did not work. He could not impose that same level of will on somebody in the top 10. I think he'll sit there comfortably as like between 15 and 11.
Yeah,
I think he'll move up, but I don't think he will ever get the opportunity. Like, every time I think he's given like this major opportunity with someone in like top 5, maybe even top 10, I don't think that his style is going to work for him.
Yep. All right. So what do you guys think about some next fights then for Hardy? I think we have a couple good options listed here. So we have Blagoy Ivanov. I think that's a good fight for him. Blagoy is a guy that, as we mentioned, can take you down, but can also keep it up on the feet and get sloppy with you, as we've seen him do. Same goes for Augusto Sakai, who just came off that Overeem loss, where he also looks like he's got some stuff to mix up. He's got some potential, but he's not yet a top 10, top 5 guy. And the last one we have mentioned there is Tai Tuivasa, and that's always a fun fight. Tai's a guy who's going to bring it to you, who can handle the heat and will exchange with heat, won't let Greg take an easy fight. So of those 3 options, where do you guys lean?
Maybe Ty's not in the top 15 currently, is he? I don't believe he is.
Maybe he's like ranked 15 or something, but
I'm looking at rank 15 is Tybura.
Okay. So
maybe
yeah, he's not in the top 15.
I don't know how you guys feel about maybe like arguably his next fight should be against a top 15 opponent. But I wouldn't mind, after Ty's recent like very, very good victory, maybe the two of them fight. over a spot in that in the top 15. Like maybe they need to fight each other and see who gets to move forward to that top 15 opponent.
Yeah,
I think that's a possibility, because I don't feel so bad about making Greg Hardy wait any amount of time. He can go fuck himself.
Adam.
Yeah, I'm good for any one of those three opponents, but the Tai Tuivasa one makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That'll be a brawl. That'll be a good old-fashioned brawl.
Mm-hmm. In addition, so we had a couple other great fights. Just as a little mention, we're not going to talk too long about this one, but Kevin Holland took on Charlie Ontiveros. There's a bit of a scary finish there. It looked like a slam by Kevin Holland. They thought maybe it was going to be a submission or something. It turned out to be a verbal submission. Something happened when Kevin slammed Charlie on the ground. Something happened to his neck.
It seemed like he landed right on his neck, shoulder area.
Yeah,
it very painful.
It was very scary. He ended up being stretched out of the octagon. So we just wanted to report that luckily it does appear that he will make a full recovery. He is okay. He is healthy. There's no major damage as far as we know. But a bit of a scary moment there in the octagon.
Yeah, it shows you how real this shit is. But it was a spectacular victory. We got We got some phenomenal slams tonight. This was a night of really entertaining wrestling, and this was no different. But scary outcome. It shows you just how painful it can be to get like taken down, slammed like that. And I think a lot of the time people might underestimate the amount of damage that something like that can cause, as opposed to like a punch. Like the octagon like floor, it's not like padded soft.
Yeah, it's not soft. It's not soft.
It's not like falling on like a gym mat. Like you hit the ground hard. It's not like concrete, but you hit the ground hard.
Yeah.
I think was someone else? Was it hit? I think that wasn't someone else. Like they got. No, you know what I think? I thought after he lost, I thought his shoulder got dislocated or some shit. Yeah, I thought it was something like that. And then the stretcher came in and I was nervous. So I'm glad to hear that he's doing okay after a CAT scan.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess we all wish the fullest of recoveries and fastest recoveries to Charlie Ontiveros. Kevin Holland, though, with a nice win. Hopefully he gets some good future opponents. I don't know why he was trying to call it Adesanya. That's a bit of a ridiculous movement at this point, but do your thing. Call your shots. Can't hurt. We did have a really, really, really impressive performance and a kind of a fun fight in Sean Strickland on the prelims taking on Jack Marshman. Sean Strickland, first of all, people were talking some good stuff about Sean Strickland coming in, and for good reason. The man has some incredible boxing skills. The way he's able to just hit and not get hit with those punches. It's just that those 1-2s are dead on. Right on target. They hit him every time. And Jack has got a chin. Jack has got some heart. But Jack Marshman was being yelled at the entire fight. Sean Strickland was just going, "Let's go, Jack. Just fall down, Jack. Come on, Jack.
Why can't you
10
fall?
seconds, Jack. Just fall down." Oh, it was an absolutely hilarious fight. It was so much fun. And I gotta say, I gotta commend the ref for not shutting him up. Because we've seen in the past when there's some trash talk going on, the ref says, "Hey, quiet down there," and that's no fun. I want to hear that stuff. It's great.
Yeah, it makes for good TV. I think at one point, Strickland yelled like, "I can't get my performance of the night if I don't finish you." God, that was a phenomenal fight. A lot of fun from both of those guys. Strickland, I was watching him, and he was his style was kind of reminding me of like an Adesanya type, just very elusive. And then very accurate with the strikes, maybe bringing a little more power to the picture.
I was going to say,
obviously Adesanya can execute that elusiveness a lot better, but he was making some like he was really, when he got hit by Jack, he got hit hard. He got hit like a truck. But if you look at the numbers, the amount of strikes that Jack actually threw and that hit, like he was elusive. So he was not letting himself get hit.
I was going to say, actually, that's a really interesting point. Because I was going to say he does look a bit like Adesanya in that way, but I was going to compare him to a Diaz brother in the way that his boxing, he's such crisp boxing, but he has that 1-2 lean 1-2, right? That's something that the Diaz brothers love doing, just boxing out of the way. He has that chin, as you just mentioned right there, where you can get cracked. He doesn't give a fuck. He'll keep coming. And he has that volume, as you mentioned, like a Diaz brother. So I think he has a bit more feints and a little bit less of that swagger. So in that sense, he's a bit more Adesanya like. Though Adesanya's got that swagger for sure. But he got a bit less of the Diaz swagger. He's got a lot of Diaz in him too, though.
Tough, moving forward, looking like a thug.
Yes, exactly.
It looked early on like his eye got hurt pretty bad by one of Jack's punches. If I'm thinking of the right fight, I remember seeing someone get punched in the eye right now, and it looked like there was a real
there was
problem.
a couple.
I think
there were a couple times. There were a couple times over the course of the night where guys got punched in the eye and they thought it was an eye poke. A few times it happened with a few different fights in the prelims. But Adam, what do you think of that fight? Did you see that fight? Did you catch it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't catch it? That's a shame. That was a really fun fight. I definitely recommend that you and anybody else at home that's listening that didn't get a chance to watch that fight, go back and watch it. It's on the prelims. If you have Fight Pass, it's completely free. Log on and watch that fight. It's great.
And that was Strickland's first performance in like a couple of years, right?
He
had that motorcycle accident. Was that him?
And he almost retired. Right? Yeah. So he had a really bad motorcycle accident. He was apparently going to retire. But he decided not to in the end. He came back.
It's a very good thing he didn't.
2 years out, I think it was. And what a comeback fight, man. It was.
Oh yeah, phenomenal. I'm excited to see what comes next to him because he strikes me as someone who has a very solid position in the future moving up those rankings.
Absolutely. A little side note here. I don't know if you heard the corner work by either team. I was listening to Jack Marshman's corner and they were speaking to each other, of course, in English. And I couldn't understand a word they were saying, dude. The Welsh accents were so strong. I'm like, I turned to my room. I'm like, you know what they're saying? He's like, no. I'm like, you know they're speaking English, right? He's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, dude. That's just a Welsh accent.
Unreal. Too thick. Can't. You know what?
It was so funny.
Totally. If you go on YouTube, look up some like Jeremy Kyle, which I guess is like the British Jerry Springer, Maury Povich guy. You can barely understand what some of these people are saying. It is remarkable.
All right. So I think that's about it on this card. It was a really fun card. The prelim had a lot of finishes. I recommend that people go back, watch some of those prelims, watch some of those finishes. Justin Ledette got a good finish at the start of the prelims. A lot of good stuff to watch, but we also we had an equal amount of fireworks, I would say, at the post-fight press conference. Dana White dropping some bombs. So we're going to start off with some news that isn't so new, and then we'll go into the really, really big bombshell news. And that is that Conor Porier, which we knew they were working on, it appears has been signed. However, it will not be, it appears, for the lightweight belt. So it does, according to Dana, Khabib has not yet given up and vacated his 155-pound belt. He is not in a rush to force Khabib to do so. And Khabib, so he's going to let Khabib hold on to it, maybe make a decision to come back. But meanwhile, this Conor Poirier fight will happen, but not for any belt. What are your thoughts on this?
Potentially. I foresee it's possible that let's say Khabib decides to really hang it up in like December time, that they would make it for the title just because it'll be vacant. But as of now, I think that Khabib will sort of hold on to it for a little bit. They'll figure out what happens. To be honest, if he fights again, I still think the only fight for him will be that GSP fight at like 165. So title won't be necessary. Yeah, I don't know what you think, Noah.
Well, first I heard someone make an interesting statement that I haven't heard anywhere else. So I just want to bring this to you guys' attention potentially, because I know I hadn't considered this, but I mean, it is possible that we see an outcome of like a couple of years from now, Khabib's mother sees just how much he misses the fight game, just how much he wants to fight, because surely he still wants to fight, and she gives him her blessing. That's a possibility for him to re-enter in a couple of years.
So I actually listened to I re-listened to his post-fight interview, but what I did is I listened to the version of it which had the subtitles for Russian. And I thought what he said in Russian was actually.
Did you watch it 42 times?
49, actually.
49.
I was actually
even better.
Yeah. So what's important to note is actually not what he said, but the masterfulness with which he said his words. An absolute master at the game.
Shout out to Luke Thomas, everyone.
Love Luke Thomas, to be honest. But so he was what was he saying? So in Russian, what I actually thought what he was saying was that more impactful than what he said in English. He was saying a few things. First of all, that we've heard from lots of fighters, GSP, Rosenama Yunus included, are classic examples of this. And but he spoke about the relief and how much pressure it was to be the champion and how he didn't want that pressure. That's not what he came to fight for. That's kind of something that came along with the wins that he didn't want. He spoke about how everyone in the world looks at him. He spoke a lot about how much he was ready. It sounded like he was ready to give it up. Maybe he comes to that point where he's like, look, I didn't do it for the fame. I didn't do it for the pressure, but I do miss the fighting enough to make it worth it. But I do see those other reasons being enough to keep him away. And Dana was saying he was really emotional when he gave up the belt, but I don't think he made that decision on the spot, right? He gave his reasons, which sounded very much like he thought of them in advance.
He had considered this.
So the emotions, I don't think, are relevant because he decided in advance.
And I think there is something to be said for, if he takes some time off and he realizes just how much he prefers having the life, the quiet life, where he's got, he's financially independent. He can live the rest of his life, support his family, and still be a great person within his community.
He can make millions still. He makes millions and millions just by appearing places.
I just wonder if he's ever going to get to a point in his life where it's like he can just go walk around in Moscow and not have crowds of people follow him. I would like to see him be able to live quietly and humbly for a little bit. Unfortunately, he says
he can't go to the grocery store.
The way it is.
I think he actually said in his thing, he said, I can't go to the grocery store anymore. I can't do any of these things anymore. I can't live my life as a normal person.
In the next 20 years, Khabib is going to become a farmer. There's my bet.
Happy. I think he'd be happy as a farmer, to be honest. I think that's the kind of life he wants.
Yeah, nice humble life.
Yeah.
If he comes back to get that 30-0, I mean, presumably I only think it'd be against GSP, but do you guys have any other opponents in mind?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I was going to say is that the reason I'm doubting it even more so is because, as Noah says, I don't see a lot of other opponents for him to come back against. We can talk about that in a second. I do have a couple thoughts of potential situations, but as it currently stands, no. And GSP is already at the end of his clock, right? We've already been talking about, or he's already mentioned how he's already hesitant to come back right now, being at the age that he is and going down to a weight class like that. So to think that in a year that he would be all of a sudden down when he's a year older doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I don't see a chance where he comes back against GSP, because if it's going to happen, it has to happen now because GSP is too old. But against someone else, let me just finish very quickly.
Go right ahead.
Against someone else, I think it would have to be a situation where someone comes in, defends about 3 or 4 times, and Khabib sees them as a fresh threat. So whether it's a Conor who wins 3 or 4 times and looks like a new Conor, or it's a brand new contender who comes out, dominates, and maybe beats Islam Makhachev when he comes and contends. Maybe Khabib says, oh, wow, the guy beat Islam and he's beating all these other guys. Maybe this guy would be worth a challenge. Legacy. But it has to be a few years to get to that point.
I don't think Khabib is interested in the slightest in fighting anyone that he's already fought. So that's why I say there's absolutely no opponent right now other than the GSP, because I think, honestly, it's going to take like a year or two to see how the division changes without Khabib.
Right now,
we need to see I think that we're going to get over these next couple of years, and Dana also mentioned this on in the post fight, but over the next couple of years, we're going to see some absolute phenomenal talents enter the UFC and rise up, and they're going to change the game entirely. Guys who grew up watching Khabib as opposed to guys who grew up watching Silva and GSP, and these guys are going to absolutely tear through the UFC. I think we're going to see some very real new Khabibs, new stars.
Khamzat Chimaev. What?
Yeah, maybe.
Khamzat Chimaev. That's literally what we're talking about.
I will say, speaking of Khamzat Chimaev, I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was like a year or two ago, there was an anonymous UFC survey that they sent out to the fighters. Leon Edwards was ranked by anonymous UFC fighters as the second most underrated fighter in the UFC, I believe.
Number 1,
which is an interesting little.
Do you know who number 1 was?
Remember?
I'm really curious. That's really
recall.
interesting.
I just read this.
That is very interesting.
If you look up like UFC fighter anonymous survey, you may be able to find the tweets with photos. I'm going to try and look that up.
Yeah, let's try to move on in the meantime, though, while you look that up. But yeah, so let's talk about this Conor Poirier fight. Adam, I don't know if you want to start off on the actual Conor Poirier fight.
We got a little sidetracked.
Exactly. I mean, I think that this is still a great fight. Conor looks like he's been training hard. He's posting a lot of pictures on Instagram. Maybe he's posting more than he's training. Who knows? But I have no doubt that Dustin is fighting hard. What's strange to me is that Dana has not been pushing it. He was kind of nonchalant about it when asked. He kind of said, "Yeah, as far as I know, it's done." Adam,
as far as I know.
Yeah. So
as far as I know, it's done. What does that mean? Like, what is that?
We know.
We know it means that no one's signed shit.
No, I don't think so. No, it doesn't. No, he doesn't say that.
People have been saying behind the scenes that as far as they know, nothing has yet been signed, and they've said that since Dana said that he thinks.
Really? That's weird. He doesn't usually do that.
Yeah. So there's some weird stuff going on.
Something weird about this whole
fight. Thing. I think a lot of it has to do with Khabib's retirement. I think that's kind of put a wrench in a lot because they have like a direct trajectory. They're saying if Poirier wins, this is what happens. If Conor wins, this is what happens. Based on their wins, this is the implications it has for the rest of the division. These are all things that are planned out well in advance. And Khabib leaving put a huge fucking wrench in their plans for the lightweight division. So I think that they're scrambling to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah, as weird as it might sound, I kind of think that Dana's under a lot of stress right now because his next two pay-per-views are probably not going to be that huge, unfortunately. He has to figure out what he wants to do with Khabib, and if Khabib's going to come back, is he going to stay at 155 or do something at 165? So I think he's just got a lot on his plate right now, as weird as it sounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think there's something weird and fishy going on. I'm really hoping they finalize some cards very soon. I think now that they're back from Fight Island, we're going to see the gears start moving, the gears start turning. Now when Dana has the time to really focus on getting the next 2.5 months finalized, and we'll start to see what happens with the next few pay-per-views. And we're going to start to see some big fight bookings. And on that conversation, some big fight bookings. One of those big fight bookings that he mentioned might happen now that he is back is Israel Adesanya, not against Robert Whittaker defending his 185-pound belt, but rather moving up to 205, not to face against John Jones, but rather against Jan Blachowitz, the current 205-pound champion. This is quite a big move. Now, I've heard Ariel Helwani has kind of been selling the narrative that this kind of looks like he's running away from John or any of that stuff, which I really disagree with. Ariel's been talking about how this is a bad look for Israel. I think that this is a great look for Israel. I think it's a perfect setup, in my opinion, to go up to 205, take John Jones's belt, as Noah said, make him the saltiest piece of salt that exists. Make him absolute pink Himalayan sea salt out there. Make the man pure NaCl right here.
He'll be so goddamn angry.
It'll be so great. Izzy will be the 185 champion, the 205 champion. And if we really get the cream on the crop, the really way to really piss John off is to not have him fight anyone at heavyweight before then. So at this point, John just hasn't fought in a year. And meanwhile, Izzy's come up and taken his belt without even having to fight him. And John gave it up for nothing. And now John is going to have to make the decision. Do I go to heavyweight or have the perfect setup for what Israel has been saying for years? 2021, Raider Stadium in LA, John Jones versus Israel Adesanya for the absolute mega fight. And Izzy at that point could ostensibly be the double champion and have John's belt.
And that's why one day Izzy will be looked back at as the greatest fighter to ever do it. Maybe I have my thoughts that he will be looked at as the greatest potentially if everything goes according to his plan.
Everything goes according to plan. If he goes and does like this fight, beats Jan, beats John at 205, goes to heavyweight, wins the heavyweight championship belt, there's no conversation.
He's certainly the most ambitious fighter right now. He is certainly the most ambitious out there. And God, it's going to be so fun to watch his career progress there. Fuck John Jones. He's salt mine right now, and he's going to continue to be a salt mine. Let's see. How long after Israel takes the belt, the light heavyweight belt, does it take for John Jones to get another DUI? There's my question. I think it happens that night. I think that during the fight, he's going to go out for a little drive and get caught.
I want to see the Twitter tirade the night Israel fights Jan.
Oh my God,
that would be so entertaining.
He's gonna be like a live fact checker on like one of those for like a political debate. He's like every single movement he makes, he's gonna have something to say about it.
All right, well, let's put the brakes on the Israel versus Jan conversation. And Adam, I'm gonna let you start off with this one. Who do you see winning Israel against Jan? Because in order to get to Jan, he has to beat Jan Blachowitz, and that's not an easy task, in my opinion.
No.
Adam, who do you see winning that fight, and how do you see it going?
As of now, I don't know. I think Izzy takes it. Jan's fantastic on the feet. He took out Reyes, but Izzy is just miles above everybody else on the feet, and he's exemplified that in his last few fights. I don't think this goes to the ground at all. I think it stays on the feet, and Izzy just outclasses him and gets that second belt. I honestly don't see it going any other way.
Interesting.
I just want to jump in really quick because, Ro, you said that I think when we addressed this, or when we jumped into this topic, you mentioned that this is the supposed next fight that's happening. I'm pretty sure Dana White did say definitively this is Israel Adesanya's next fight.
It is not booked. It's just not confirmed as to the date. But yes, it will be his next fight. But on to go off what Adam was saying, I do think Israel will win. But what's interesting to me is whether it can go to the ground. Jan is actually very good on the ground. He's shown to be very good on the ground in the past, but he has to get Israel there, and it's not easy to. However, he's also got the weight advantage. I think if Jan gets his hands on Izzy, if Jan has Izzy against the fence, I can very much see Jan taking Izzy down, and I can very much see Izzy having problems getting out from underneath him because he's so big and heavy. Now, the big problem, though, for Jan is closing that distance in the first place. I think Izzy has the footwork, he has the jab, he has the distance management, I think, to be able to stay off the fence and to be able to keep the distance between him and Jan. However, if he has a fuck up, if Jan is able to close that distance, I do think Jan will have success up close. So I think Izzy's has got to be able to keep his normal game going, use that footwork, use that jab, that distance management. And I actually think he kind of has to think about taking Jan out kind of early, because I think the longer he's in there with Jan, that power is the last thing to go, and he always has that risk of getting taken down or getting hit by a big shot, and I think it's problematic if he does. But before that, then, as long as Izzy is agile like he usually is, I think it's Izzy's game all day.
Do we have any indication to how well Jan's cardio holds up in the championship rounds?
I mean, he fought Jacare for 5 rounds, and yes, it was mostly a grimy, against the fence, grappling, clinch work kind of fight, but he was able to survive it for 5 rounds against Jacare.
Because Israel, I have no doubts about his cardio making it the full 5 rounds, but especially with the extra weight that Jan's bringing in, makes it a little more difficult.
Actually, though, but when you have a 205-pound guy leaning on you for 4 or 5 rounds, it's a lot harder to keep up your energy. So all these things, like the weight change, puts a lot of the things that we quote know about Izzy into question. It does not put in the speed or the agility or the elusiveness into question, but the takedown defense, it does, because it is different against a big guy like that. His everything on the ground in general, just his ability to get up on the ground, his scrambling ability, it does put that a little bit into question, because you don't know how that's going to be against a big heavy guy, and the cardio. Right. If it gets to the ground, will change. But if it stays on the feet in a striking game, of course, any day, Izzy is going to destroy him cardio-wise as well.
Right. Well, Israel has just given me absolutely nothing. I have no reason to doubt him. He says he can do it. He can do it. No, every single time he fights, I think, all right, this is the fight that's going to prove that there's nothing he can't do. And then the next fight comes up and he's like, oh, but here's the real challenge to him. It just keeps happening. And he just keeps winning. At what point are we just going to say, yeah, he's just going to do whatever the hell he wants. He's going to get it.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll see if this goes well. If this goes well, then again, this is just more evidence to, Israel's overwhelming greatness.
Absolutely.
Great fight. Love it. Very excited. Super excited to see Jones's reaction to all of this.
Yeah, and actually something that before we started recording on the podcast, Adam, you were complaining a little bit about the fact that this is a really exciting fight, but why are they not, or why is Dana acting as if Rob doesn't want the Israel Adesanya fight? That Adam, you were saying is a little bit problematic.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, after Rob's last fight, he said he wasn't going to campaign for a title shot. He still wants to, get the rematch back with Izzy. He says, he's improved a lot, and he wants to show that he didn't show up that night, and there's still a great fight there between them. But he just explicitly said he will not campaign for a title shot. And of course, Dana goes off saying, "Oh, he doesn't want it." He explicitly said he doesn't want the fight, which is very untrue. And so Dana doesn't want to make that fight, and he wants Izzy to move up to 205. I still think Rob will eventually get the fight. I just don't think it will be for a while.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm perfectly fine with him not fighting Rob right now. I think Izzy's deserved a big fight, like moving up to 205. He's defended his title a bunch, and he's ready to go.
Do you think they'll do an interim championship at any point for middleweight? If maybe Izzy gets a little comfortable at light heavyweight?
I think
potentially.
I think what has to happen is Izzy has to win the belt, of course, and then if he fights John Jones, they'll do an interim.
Yeah.
I think they'll do a Rob Whittaker against. I would say if you see a Darren Till losing to Jack Hermanson, I actually can see a Jack Hermanson Robert Whittaker interim belt. I can, and then that sets up perfectly for the UFC to sell another 185 title unification bout in Israel Adesanya's return against potentially Robert Whittaker. They can put that in Australia. By then, they will for sure be able to put a stadium show in Australia in a year's time. And I think that's another huge thing. I think if everything goes as to plan for the UFC, Izzy beats Jan in March, beats John Jones in July, comes back.
That's a quick turnaround after that Jan fight, ideally.
That's how Izzy likes to fight, though. Wins in July. It's a 4-month turnaround. That's okay. Comes back. Meanwhile, in also say summertime, Rob beats maybe Hermanson for the interim belt, and then Izzy comes back at the end of the year and has a mega fight in Australia or in New Zealand and unites that the interim with the undisputed belt at 185.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll move on. I guess we have a couple more things to mention. Also planned for that March card, or at least rumored for that March pay-per-view card, is Stipe Miocic defending his heavyweight belt against Francis Ngannou, who's finally, after 2.5 years, 3, maybe even 4 years, getting his rematch and another shot at gold against Stipe. So really, really hype fight. Who do you guys see win this fight? I actually personally will lean, regardless of Miocic's amazing performances against DC, I still am going to lean Ngannou. I think Miocic does not have that speed anymore. I don't think that DC was able to put on that speed in the same way that Ngannou could. I don't think anyone can put on the power in the same way Ngannou could. And I think that at this point, Stipe's chin, while it was able to hold up against Ngannou the first time, will not be able to the second time. He's taken a lot of damage since then.
It's a fair argument. I mean, it's hard to also argue against just how fucking dominant Stipe was the first time around. Like he completely dismantled Ngannou. It's hard, and based on Ngannou's performances, which all recently, I mean, they're always just very quick performances against just about everyone except for that one top guy. I mean, I haven't seen enough evidence of his improvement because he hasn't had to show evidence of that improvement.
He hasn't been able to. He hasn't had the opportunity.
He hasn't had to. There's no reason to. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Stipe is like probably the most well-rounded, arguably one of the most well-rounded heavyweights of all time. Possibly the heavyweight greatest of all time. Arguably. Yep. Ngannou stands a much better shot than he did his first time around, but like. I just don't know if I agree with you to the degree to which Stipe has declined. He himself, I remember when after his win against Cormier, he was talking like, "Why the fuck's everyone talking about me retiring? I don't know. I'm not even close to retiring. Not even remotely close to there." So, clearly he still feels good. He still feels like a champion. And I think that he is probably going to win that fight.
Adam, you're the tiebreaker.
I'm gonna lean Ngannou.
Right. Yeah, buddy. Noah, you're alone.
It'll be a quick night. Unfortunately.
Not really.
Look,
I suppose we'll see.
Stipe was able to beat Ngannou, but in the process, he took a few of Ngannou's heaviest shots. Ngannou also took a few of Stipe's heaviest shots. But in the interim time between then, Stipe is being knocked out. Not only has he been knocked out, but he's then fought 2 more fights where he took some major damage, didn't get knocked out, but took more damage. Declined, had a few more years of fighting. I'm sure he had some gym wars in the interim. Ngannou hasn't been hit at all. Ngannou's chin was legendary back then and hasn't been tested since. And so based on just that, I think that a similar fight might happen. Even if the exact same fight happens, I think Ngannou wins because I think Stipe's chin doesn't hold up like it did that first time. And for that reason, I think Ngannou is going to win. Regardless of whether or not I agree, we haven't seen if he's changed. We don't know if he's implemented all those fixes to his game plan, but I don't think it'll matter because I don't think that Stipe will be able to handle that one shot. And that one shot is all that fucking matters with Francis Ngannou. What I think is hype is a Curtis Blades rematch, the trilogy that's going to come up afterwards, because Curtis Blades just has to avoid that shot and get him down 5 times in the fight. And if he does it 5 times, he wins. Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying, Adam? You almost.
I was just gonna say that DC hits very hard, knocked him down in the second round of their third fight, but nobody hits as hard as Francis. And if that same shot was taken by Stipe, then
done. Over.
Francis's shots also tend to be like they come from further away. They're more choreographed. You can, like a high level striking, but DC striking comes from, very, very up close. He's very, very dirty boxer. He gets right up there. And I mean, like, look at the second fight when he knocked out Stipe. That was from just a very short, very close up uppercut. That's how DC fights. He's a stocky, but he's right. My bad.
Regardless,
but it was very close. He was very close to him, and he just threw that very short punch. And it's harder to detect that kind of striking than it is to see an Ngannou coming at you. And Stipe knows now from that fight exactly how Ngannou throws his punches and exactly how he choreographs them. And, once he took some strikes, but he also was able to avoid the majority. Like he was able to defend and avoid the majority of them because he figured him out. And now if anything, he only knows him better. So it's going to be the story of whether Ngannou has improved to the point where we need him to, or versus whether Stipe has declined to the level that you believe he has.
But Ngannou, when he knocks guys out, so DC, when he knocked Stipe out, he knocked him out with that huge overhand right because it was clean. Right on the chin.
Yeah.
When Ngannou knocks you out, he doesn't hit you clean. If you look at all those replays by Ngannou,
I mean, arguably he hits him clean because your whole face caves in.
No. So he clips him. He hits him with 1 or 2 knuckles. He barely touches him. Maybe glances off the back of the head, and that knocks them out. DC knocked him out with a clean shot, and Ngannou doesn't need a clean shot. So to your point, yeah, he might be able to avoid them. They're coming from further away. And he's maybe not they don't have the same level of trickery that DC's have, but he doesn't need to hit him clean like DC does to finish the fight.
Fair. I think that there's an important mental game here too. I think if Stipe withstands Ngannou for that first round, I think Ngannou's confidence drains immediately, and he's going to look scared. And I think that he would be very intimidated walking in there against Stipe, the guy who fucking not only beat him, but like put on like an impossibly impressive performance and withstood some of the best that Ngannou has. I mean, that's got to be a little demoralizing to him. So I think that first round is very critical. If Stipe makes it through, Ngannou, it's going to impact him heavily.
Yep, fair.
It's a tough one, but it's going to be a great fight. I'm excited for that one for sure.
I am too. I am also excited for another fight that was just announced. Well, not really announced. It was rebooked in just 2 weeks' time. RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, will be fighting against Islam Makhachev. They were supposed to fight on the Khabib card just a couple weeks ago. That was canceled last second. They were able to rebook it, and it's going to actually headline the fight card in 2 weeks' time, which is actually really nice. It means it will be a 5-round fight, which is really good because we want to see Islam make his way up the ranks. We want to see him fight against top-level guys, and we want to see him again in 5-round main events if we want to see how he can perform in a potential title fight or a main event against one of those real true top 5 elites in that lightweight division. Next week we have actually quite a good card. We got Thiago Santos taking on Glover Texiera. This fight was supposed to happen just a few weeks ago, about a month ago, I believe. Was canceled because of COVID. bit of a classic theme, unfortunately, recently. However, it is coming back. We do have this 5-round main event. Glover Texiera, Thiago Santos. The winner of this, we thought, was going to get the next fight against Jan Blachowitz. But as we just previously mentioned, that spot looks to be yoinked by Israel Adesanya.
Yep.
But that doesn't take away from how good of a fight this is on paper.
For sure.
Glover's been around forever. Thiago coming off that loss to John Jones about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, where he destroyed every ligament known to man in that knee of his, in that left knee, I believe, and then proceeded to throw that left leg instead as a kick while it was torn up. Absolute beast. Animal. I don't even know. Yeah, I can't even call this guy a man. He's an animal. Maheta, I honestly, I do think Maheta is going to come back with some real good power. I think he's going to be dynamic. I think he's had the time off to recover that he needed. And I think he's going to come in and I think he's going to dominate Glover. I think he's going to knock him out. I think he's going to have a statement. And I think it's a little bit problematic because I actually think he deserves the title shot first against Jan, given that he A, took a scorecard from John, and B, is the last man to beat Jan Blachowicz in his last fight before facing John.
Yeah, it's almost like it makes too much sense.
That
Israel has UFC been known to make too much sense. This fight, honestly, like I'm excited for it because I like the two guys. I like watching them fight, but it absolutely seems like a bit of like a level wise. It seems like a bit of a mismatch. Like I don't think that dismantling Anthony Smith really at this point in his career really demonstrates anything too substantial about you as a fighter, whereas we know that Thiago Santos arguably beat John Jones. That says a hell of a lot as a fighter.
That's some disrespect you're dropping there.
Smith is great. Smith has had a great career, but like, come on, you're going to tell me that he's getting a title shot anytime in his future?
I think he has a chance. If he comes back.
I disagree.
I don't think dismantling Anthony Smith, I think, says a lot about you. I disagree with that statement that it doesn't. I still don't think it says as much, of course, about you as Thiago Santos' his performance against John.
One of those names where you put the apostrophe after the Santos next. You wouldn't go you can't go Santos's and just be Santos apostrophe.
Yeah,
that's a little grammar cast for everyone.
No, that's how it's pronounced though, Santos's. Regardless though. Yeah, I don't think he's going to beat Glover. I do think that Santos is going to beat Glover, but I don't think that Glover is a slouch. I do think that he is going to be a tough matchup. I just think that Santos is just that next level elite.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to, clearly win this fight, and then he deserves that title shot as he already currently deserves it.
All right. In addition, we have in our co-main event, Andrei Arlovski, the former heavyweight champion of the world, the Pitbull, taking on Tanner Boser, our Canadian brethren.
Our local boy.
He looks like the typical Canadian, big guy, big beard, lumberjack kind of look. Yeah. But he's good. He's got some fast hands. He's got some good movement.
Very impressive.
I know Arlovski's that guy who every time you say, I think he's got to retire. He's got no more chin. He can't fight anymore. He comes back with a couple big statement wins and his chin holds up. But I do think that, again, Tanner Boser should have the edge in this one. I do think he should have the power in this one, the power edge, the speed edge, the footwork edge. I think that I definitely lean Tanner Boser. I think it's another case of the young lion taking away and a bit of a passing of the torch moment from an old heavyweight to the young, hungry lion.
Yeah. That's exactly how I see it going as well.
We do have a couple other good fights. We have Khalid Taha is on this fight, which is a good fight. Great fight against with Ian Heinisch against Brandon Allen. That's a really, really nice. That's a really fun fight. Claudia Gadelha is on this fight. We have Alexander Romanov, another undefeated fighter, coming on this fight. So we have some good names. We don't have any massive guys, but
no big stars.
No stars, but we have some up and comers that aren't super well known that I think will get some exposure hopefully on this card, and we'll see them grow.
Yeah, it'll be a good day. Also gonna just again throw out there for everyone else who maybe wants to know my opinion. If you look up Andrei Arlovski's picture on Google when you're looking up the fights, his head looks like a light bulb. It's very narrow at the bottom and then it becomes very wide and bulbous at the top. That's my observation. So, whether that plays into how you think the fight will go, maybe add that to the comments. Do you think that light bulb head's gonna, impact the fight?
Let us know, comment, like, subscribe,
Please.
the usual. But yeah, that being said, as always, yes, please do like, comment, and subscribe. It has been a fun show with you guys. We will be back, as always, next Smesh Sunday with our recap of Glover Texiera against Thiago Santos. Until then, have a great week. And
hold on, I just want to add in there, if you are of the opinion that we do not have the faces for radio for broadcasting, but the voices for radio, please check us out on Spotify.
And
you want to look at our ugly
Google
mugs.
Podcast, Anchor, Stitcher, I believe. I'm not sure, actually, maybe not Stitcher yet. There's a few other ones. We will be out on Apple Podcasts.
This is like all the different dating apps that I'm hearing about now. I've been out of the dating game for a couple of years. There's like Hinge and like Twister and Fucko, and I don't know. There's all sorts of weird ones.
So yeah, add us on. So listen to us on Fucko. And we will catch you guys next week. Have a great week.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.